Ari Matusiak, welcome to the Echo Chamber. Thank you for taking a few minutes. So just diving right in, I wonder if you could tell us what led you to co-founding Rewiring America and really doing a lot of work. You're still doing policy work now, of course, but you have a lens on consumers and wonder how you decided to make that shift and start this organization after working in the Obama White House for many years.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me. I would just say, I think for us, the reason why we started rewiring in the summer of 2020 was because um, of a set of climate reasons that tied to a set of kitchen table realities. So the climate story is one that has been historically sort of talked about on the supply side, where our power comes from, what the sources of it are, how clean or dirty it is, and what we have to do to make a transition to a clean energy future. But the reality is, on the other side of the ledger are all the machines that people rely on in their day-to-day lives that plug into the grid or into a gas network. And they comprise an enormous amount of our emissions. And in fact, the kitchen table decisions that people make about what kind of cars they drive, how they heat the air and water in their homes, how they cook their food, how they dry their clothes, what powers those things. That's 42% of our energy related emissions across a billion machines in 152 million households. So you're not going to get to the climate answer unless you deal with the kitchen table. And the other part of it is that the kitchen table realities are the ones that people focus on. How much money do we have left over every month? How are we going to be able to pay this energy bill? And it turns out that the answer is tied together. If we go to higher performing, better machines that happen to be electric, we also can help people have more comfortable homes and save a bunch of money on their bills and create local jobs that don't get automated or offshored.
Yeah, it seems like your work is especially important and relevant now as there's such a focus on cost of living, electricity prices, and what the average person is feeling in terms of their bills. So it's very timely, certainly. Okay, so Rewiring America has released a new report called Homegrown Energy: How Household Upgrades Can Meet 100% of Data Center Demand Growth. So I've been seeing this a lot lately. Would love for you to just tell us about this interesting, really innovative concept. What is in this report? What are you talking about here?
Yeah, well, so if you come back to the kitchen table, um, it's definitely getting harder for people since we started rewiring America. Bills are going up. They've gone up 30%, energy bills over the last 4 years alone. And if you look at the graph over the last 6 months in terms of electricity prices and also gas prices, the line is basically vertical in terms of how much the increase has been. So that there are a lot of reasons for that, but a lot of them have to do with, frankly, sort of a insufficient supply of power because what's happening now, really for the first time in decades, is that we're seeing increased demand for electricity in the U.S. economy and significant increased demand. And that is coming in large part from hyperscalers, i.e., tech companies that are building data centers for AI. 93 gigawatts out of 128 gigawatts of projected load growth is coming from those data centers. And to put it in context, that's almost 15% of current US electricity. So it's a huge amount of increase. And so what's happening right now is that we're kind of in a global race for AI. The US wants to own that future, and that means having those data centers here in the United States. Those data centers use a bunch of power, and those companies are needing to create power or find it somewhere. And so they are proposing a number of solutions for that, including starting investing in new generation, big facilities. But our report showed that actually 100% of the projected load growth from these companies could be met if we invested smartly in households. If we did invested in energy efficiency measures like trading out old inefficient electric heating or inefficient air conditioning for new heat pumps, if we put in the rooftop solar and battery storage, we can meet 100% of that projected load growth. And what's awesome about that is that if we make that investment, the hyperscaler gets their power that they need to build their data centers, and households get relief on their bills at the kitchen table because their bills will come down over $1,000 a year as a result. And so what the report showed is that math, and the proposal is effectively to create a model where we enable hyperscalers to make those investments directly in households so that they can get the new things that save them money on their bills.
I mean, it seems like such a win-win. I'm curious if you've had any response from any of the hyperscalers so far.
Yeah, we've started talking to the companies and to utilities as well. I think there is a lot of interest. People want to try to figure out win-win solutions. The question then becomes, okay, well, how do we make that happen? And you kind of need to have everybody at the table to make that happen. You obviously need the household to participate. You need the local contractors. You need the hyperscalers themselves and the utilities. But we're confident that this is a model that can and will work, and that once it's demonstrated, it's going to be kind of a catchy idea.
So given the current context of rising rates and efforts to really pull back on clean energy from the grid, I'm curious how, from when you started, 5 years ago to now, how has the messaging shifted in terms of with policymakers and even with consumers? You all have been focused on the household impact since the beginning, but I wonder how messaging might have changed over these last 5 years, given just the evolution of the environment.
Yeah, I think at the macro level, there's been a bunch of conversation about how we talk about climate and how we talk about sort of these policies. For us at Rewiring, we've always been centered on the household and the kitchen table conversation. And the going back to that 42% of energy related emissions, it's a must do if you care about climate. But as we were talking about earlier, households don't think like that. They don't say, you know what I have to do today? I have to buy a heat pump water heater because our emissions are too high. They don't think about their water heater until they wake up in the morning and their shower is cold. And then they say, oh, now what do we do? And so there is a huge dynamic that needs to be solved, which from our perspective means we have to make these just empirically better technologies that people love and don't go back from once they've sort of experienced them. We have to make them affordable. We have to make them desirable, meaning people need to know about them, and we have to make the experience better. And so we've been laser focused on that, which is why there are a set of policy efforts and plays to make, which is really goes at how do you make those machines more affordable. But the rest of it is a market solution around how you deploy and how people raise their hands and say, yeah, that's something that I want for me and my family.
Last two questions here, just try to help the audience get to know you a little bit better at a more personal level. First, what's the biggest risk that you've ever taken?
Well, I'll give two. Um, we were talking right before we started recording about how we both met our wives in Nevada. The biggest risk I took when I first met her was that I didn't immediately respond to an opportunity to get to know her, and took a few months. So that was one big risk. But the other big risk, more on the professional side, was that uh, was I out of law school, I turned down an offer at a law firm because I wanted to go work in the Obama administration very, very badly. So I turned down the offer at the law firm. The only problem was I didn't actually have a job in the Obama administration, and so I kind of, as they say, I burned all the boats in order to try to make that happen, and thankfully it did.
Yeah, it seemed to have worked out on both fronts there with your wife and with your getting a job in the administration.
Yes, indeed.
And then finally, what's something about you that might surprise people?
Well, I guess maybe some people don't know that I'm an absolutely fanatic Green Bay Packers fan. And so I read obsessively about the team. I text my dad quite a lot about it, and I hit refresh since most of the games aren't televised where I live. I hit refresh on the sort of the app to find out what's going on play by play.
Well, I'm glad that we caught you this week after a good win on Sunday
Yeah,
night.
well, yes, I'm in a very good mood. I'm in a
Yes,
very good mood.
yes. Excellent. Well, Ari Matusiak, Rewiring America, thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.